A column by Mehr Afshan Farooqi titled Ghalib and Momin Part 1. Poets and writers do not function in a vacuum. They belong to a milieu, have a circle of friends and rivals, and an audience of listeners and readers. Momin Khan Momin was Ghalib's contemporary, a friend, one might say, a peer whose poetry Ghalib admired. Unfortunately, Momin died accidentally at the age of 51 from a fall in 1851. Ghalib went on to live until 1869. I had wanted to write a book on Momin for some years. I finally began work on the project this summer. In spite of having a somewhat fleshed out proposal with ideas for chapters, I found myself stuck and going in circles. Momin was born in Delhi in the year 1800 or 1801 and died in 1851, well before the revolt of 1857. He was barely 3 years old when the British East India Company's forces under Lord Lake defeated the army of the Marathas and marched into Delhi. The Mughal ruler had already been reduced to a pawn and a pensioner, whose authority existed in name only. The British were astute not to disturb the status quo. Negotiations were carried out with Shah Alam II, the Mughal ruler whose privilege to rule was signified by the coins issued under his name and the khutbah read in the mosque on Friday. All this remained unchanged. Shah Alam II was succeeded by his son Akbar Shah II. A relative period of peace followed. Not many changes were introduced until 1830. Momin Khan Momin belonged to a family of famous Hakims who had moved to Delhi from Kashmir. In 1761, during the rule of Shah Alam II, two brothers, Kamdar Khan and Namdar Khan, travelled from Kashmir to Delhi. They were employed at the court of Shah Alam II and awarded the Jagir of Narnaul. Hakim Namdar's son, Ghulam Nabi Khan, was Mumin's father. When the company took over the administration of Delhi, the Pargana or the district of Narnaul was taken away. In lieu of that, a stipend of 1,000 rupees annually was awarded to the dependents. Momin's father received 450 rupees. Hakim Ghulam Nabi Khan was a murid of Shah Abdul Aziz, son of the Sufi reformer Shah Waliullah, who founded the Madrasa-e Rahimiyya. Thus, when Nabi Khan's son was born in the year 1800, the venerated Shah Abdul Aziz was requested to suggest a name and recite the azan in the newborn's ear. Shah Abdul Aziz suggested Muhammad Momin Khan as the name for the child. Momin went on to study at the Madrasa-e Rahimiyya, where he became proficient in Arabic and Persian. He learned the practice of Unani or Greek medicine from his father and his uncle and became a Hakim. Momin's affiliations with Shah Abdul Aziz did not end. He was a staunch Sunni and became a follower of Shah Ahmad Bareilly. Asadullah Khan Ghalib was born and grew up in Agra in the last decade of the 18th century. Ghalib's father was a soldier who was killed by a stray bullet while in the service of Raja Alwar while Ghalib was very young. His uncle, father's brother, Nasrullah Beg Khan, joined Lord Lake with his own forces and was rewarded the revenue of the Parganas of Sonk and Sonra. He was married to the daughter of the highly influential Nawab Ahmad Bakhsh Khan of Firozpur, Chirka and Loharu. Nasrullah Khan's accidental death in 1806 deprived Ghalib once again of paternal mentoring. The British took back the land and conferred a pension of 10,000 rupees to be shared among the dependents of Nasrullah Beg from Nawab Ahmad Bakhsh Khan's estate. The latter reduced the pension to 5,000, of which he gave half to another dependent. Ghalib and his brother's share came to rupees 1,500 per annum. Ghalib moved to Delhi permanently after his marriage to Umrao Begum, the daughter of Nawab Ilahi Bakhsh Maroof. The latter was the younger brother of Nawab Ahmad Bakhsh Khan. Maroof was a poet with leanings towards mysticism. Unfortunately for Ghalib, his father in law's unworldliness left him in the uncomfortable state of having in Nawab Ahmad Khan a powerful, wealthy relative who deprived Ghalib of his rightful share of his uncle's pension. Ghalib's move to Delhi occurred sometime between 1813 or 1816. It is said that he never owned a house in Delhi and always lived in rented places. The last was in Ballimara, rented from Hakim Mahmud. Thus, though Ghalib and Momin were contemporaries who shared a literary milieu, yet we cannot assume that their lived experiences of Delhi were similar. How different was Momin's Delhi from Ghalib's Delhi? My aim is to examine Momin's Delhi through the network of his profession as a Hakim and also his affiliation with the Mujahideen of Ahmad Barelvi. What was the status of Hakims in Delhi society? To what extent did they represent the literate elite of the society? What were the institutions of learning? What was the equation between the secular and the sacred? My initial research shows that Hakims were among society's elite. The Unani system of medicine traveled first to southern India via trade relations with the Arabs. Here it was infused with the Ayurvedic practice of medicine. However, the influx of Hakims from Persia in notable numbers occurred during the Mughal rule, along with the poets and the artists. Hakims enjoyed the patronage of the royalty and the nobility, as did poets, but the nature of their profession brought them closer to the seat of power. Medical practice of the Unani style necessitated at least some knowledge of Arabic. Reform movements of the Wahhabi style advocated a return to the scriptures and the doctrinal texts in Arabic. In Momin, I found a scholar of Arabic, Persian, Urdu with a strong leaning towards classical arts. He composed ghazals that featured direct engagement with emotions. He did not shy away from expressing love and its physicality in his masnavis. Momin's persona was romantic. His flamboyant style of dress, long curly hair falling on his shoulders, and smoldering eyes caught the fancy of the Tazkira writers. Ghalib, in spite of the fame he acquired in his lifetime, and more so afterwards, is more of a tragic figure. He suffered injustice, the unfair allocation of pension, the death of his infant children, his brother Yusuf's madness and death, the humiliation of being jailed for gambling, most likely embittered him.
आपने गालिब और मोमिन पार्ट वन युशा अब्बास साहब की आवाज़ में सुना। अब गालिब और मोमिन पार्ट टू सुनिए औसाफ अहमद साहब की आवाज़ में। ये दोनों मजमून पाकिस्तान के मशहूर अखबार द डॉन में सन 2025 के निसफ़े सानी में छपे थे।
In 1639, the 11th year of his reign, the Mughal Emperor Shah Jahan took the decision to build a new capital at Delhi. He named the new city Shah Jahanabad. It embodied his personal philosophy of architecture. There was no precedent for a planned city with a fort complex from Shah Jahan's predecessors. Agra and Lahore, the two other capital cities of the Mughals, had forts, but they were designed within an existing city. The Red Fort at Shah Jahanabad symbolized the relationship of the emperor and his subjects. It was the focus of the daily ritual of the Mughal Empire. It called for a special relationship between the palace and the city. After Shah Jahan's death, the victory of his third son Aurangzeb reintroduced a pattern of active conquests. which necessitated his absence from Delhi. This led to the disuse of many spaces and rituals associated with the Mughals. During the rule of Muhammad Shah Rangila, the Persian ruler Nadir Shah dealt a severe blow to Mughal power. Subsequently, the Marathas and the Jats repeatedly attacked the city, damaging the fort and the other royal buildings. When the next ruler, Akbar Shah, came to the throne in 1748, the Mughal Empire had further weakened. The political situation continued to decline rapidly in the reign of Alamgir II, who was mostly a prisoner of his minister Ghaziuddin. Alamgir's successor, Shah Alam, had escaped from Delhi after his father's murder and did not return until 1771. Shah Alam was blinded by the Rohilla chieftain Ghulam Qadir, who also dug up and damaged parts of the fort in search of a buried treasure. The victory of Lord Lake, representing the forces of the British East India Company in 1803, and the appointment of a British resident in Delhi, led to many changes in the fort and the city. The last two rulers, Akbar Shah and Bahadur Shah II, continued to offer patronage to the arts, albeit on a reduced scale. The perception of the fort was affected by the change in the spaces around the fort. Gardens began to disappear as churches and military housing appeared. The British Residence House appropriated some of the grandeur associated with the fort. Ghalib and Momin's Delhi changed slowly in the first half of the 19th century, but the arts continued to flourish. Delhi was home to many Urdu poets at this time. Literary mahfils were the order of the day. Ghalib and Momin were not rivals in the way Ghalib and Zauq are projected. For Momin, writing ghazals was a pastime. He was a hakim, a physician by profession, who had many hobbies, dabbling in astrology, music, chess, and his life was enriched with a circle of friends and admirers. His love affairs were the talk of the town. He was not a contender for royal patronage. Momin's poetry has a somewhat limited range because his focus primarily is ishq majazi, or earthly love. His long narrative poems, or masnavis, are unabashedly personal, where he isn't shy in describing the physical side of love. For example, इस शहर में एक नौजवान था, उस शाख में शोहरे जहाँ था नाम तो मोमिन और दीन कुफ्र, जा महव बुता और दिल नशी कुफ्र. There was a young man in the city who was a world famous lover. His name was Momin, but he was a non believer. His life was steeped with idols, and his heart with denial of faith. As the love story in the above mentioned excerpt progresses, the description becomes amorous. लब से मेरे लब मिलाए रखना, बाजू से वो सर उठाए रखना, वो मुंह में ज़ुबां की लज्जतें हाय, ज़ाहिर हरकत से रग़बतें हाय, keeping her lips sealed to mine, lifting her head from the circle of my arms, the pleasure of the tongue in my mouth, ah, the obviousness of desire from her actions. While it is not exactly extraordinary to read descriptions of amorousness in Urdu prose and poetry, it is almost never as obviously personal as in Momin's case. This kind of poetry earned him a reputation. However, Momin's ghazal was sophisticated and tender, showing him expertise in molding language to express his thoughts. Ghalib admired Momin's style in the ghazal and famously wrote that he would give his entire diwan for this share of Momin's. तुम मेरे पास होते हो गोया जब कोई दूसरा नहीं होता. You are close to me as if no one else can ever be. The ghazal from which this verse is selected is outstanding enough to put Momin among the best of poets in this genre. It begins with असर उसको ज़रा नहीं होता, रंज राहत फिजा नहीं होता, or it has no effect on her, sorrow does not bring relief. The language is simple, but the idea is unique. The lover's sorrow does not have any impact, any asar on the beloved. Therefore, sorrow does not bring relief. But this begs the question, what does bring relief or rahat to the stricken lover? What is said is fine, but what is left unsaid, hanging in the air, so as to say, is even finer. In Ghalib's favorite verse from this ghazal, there is an air of ambiguity created by the word choice of Goya, a word with multiple meanings. Goya conveys a contemplative as if that nonetheless feels like reality and describes a suspension of disbelief that can occur, often through good storytelling. Thus, the verse implies a suspension of reality, an imaginary state of nearness or closeness that is unique. Ghalib and Momin's Delhi was packed with poets of high caliber. Shah Nasir, Zauq, Shefta, Azurda, Imam Bakhsh Sehbai, and above all, the last Mughal ruler, Bahadur Shah Zafar, and his heir apparent, Mirza Fakhru, all composed ghazals. For Momin to make a place among them, the illustrious needed formidable talent, which he certainly possessed in good measure.
अब सुनिए युशा खान साहब की आवाज़ में ये तवील मजमून जो कि सन 2024 में द वायर में छपा था।
Momin Kha Momin, an unfinished portrait by Mehr Afshan Farooqi. There is an unfinished portrait of 19th century Urdu and Persian poet Momin Kha Momin, 1800 to 1851. It is a drawing with wash and some color on paper. It is attributed to the painter Jeevan Ram. The portrait was personal collection of Stuart Cary Welsh, who bequeathed it to the Howard University Arts Collection. In the portrait or sketch, because of its incomplete, Momin is shown sitting cross-legged, wearing a fine angarka through which his chest hair is faintly visible. He is looking straight into the viewer's eye. The drawing of head and neck appear finished, while the remaining part is roughly sketched in pencil. Momin's bright, piercing eyes, his full head of long, curly hair falling to his shoulders, lips tinged with natural pinkish hue, are depicted sensitively. And the effect of his incomplete portrait is riveting. Momin lived in Delhi in the first half of the 19th century. He belonged to a family of Hakims, physicians, who had migrated from Kashmir and made Delhi their home during the reign of Shah Alam II, ruled between 1760 to 1806. Momin's father, Hakim Ghulam Nabi Khan, was a follower of Naqshbandi Sufi order, and Shah Abdulaziz 1746 to 1824 was his spiritual mentor. It was Shah Abdulaziz who personally recited the azan of the newborn's ear and gave Hakim Ghulam Nabi Khan's son the name Momin. The young Momin was an exceptionally bright but easily destructible child. He received his early education in Arabic and Persian at the madrasa of Shah Abdulaziz, where he received thorough grounding in Arabic and Persian. He learned the art and skill of Hakimi at the feet of his fathers and uncles. Soon he was writing prescriptions. Momin's sharp mind was always searching for new field to conquer. He became interested in astrology, palmistry, and Ramal. There are several stories about his expertise in the field. The story I like most is the one about lizards. Once Momin was playing chess with his favorite pupil, Hakim Sukhanand Rakam, when the latter pointed to a lizard on the wall, presumably to distract Momin from the game. Momin looked at the lizard and spontaneously made a prediction. This lizard will not leave until its mate arrives from the east. How will that happen? Quipped his pupil. Shortly afterwards, a cloth merchant arrived from Benares. He was accompanied by a laborer carrying a large bundle of fine silk cloth on his head. When the bundle was untied, a lizard jumped out from it and ran to the wall where the first lizard was clinging. Both lizards moved off together. Momin's prediction was proven right.
Delhi ki aakhri shama. Delhi in the first half of 19th century sparkled with poets and literati. My father Shamsur Rahman Farooqi's novel Kai Chand The Sare Asma Mein has superb details of Delhi's social literary culture in this period. The great Ustad Ibrahim Khan Zauq and Mirza Asadullah Khan Ghalib were Momin's contemporaries. Mirza Farhatullah Beg's Delhi Ki Aakhri Shama provides a fictitious but highly realistic pen portrait of the luminous poets and scholars at the Delhi Mushaira. Essayist, humorist, and poet Mirza Farhatullah Beg, 1885 to 1947, was a student of the illustrious Diptin Nazir Ahmed. Upon his Ustad's death, he penned a khaka pen portrait, Nazir Ahmed ki kahani, kuch meri, kuch unki zabani. Nazir Ahmed's story, narrated partly by me and partly by him, which was highly acclaimed. This style of narration that went back and forth between the author and the subject was very lively and engaging. Braid's prose evoked the feeling of unpretentious, idiomatic, everyday speech and transported the reader back to the era he described. Dehli Ki Aakhri Shama is a series of sketches artfully strung through together through a first person narrator to recreate the planning and environment of Mushaira, in which Delhi's glittering poets, led by the poet king Bahadur Shah Zafar II and his son Mirza Fakhru, are portrayed. Ustad Zauq, Ghalib, Momin, Shefta, Shehbai, etc. are described eloquently, but Momin's portrait is the most colorful. Bey constructed Momin's portrayal from the Muhammad Hussain Azad's description of Momin in Abe Hayat, which in turn based on information received from Altaf Hussain Hali. Azad's canonical Tazkira, biographical details of poets with samples of work, is regarded as first history of Urdu poetry. While Tazkiras were organized alphabetically, Azad organized his Tazkira historically by dividing it into eras. Abe Hayat was the first published in 1880. Azad had forgotten to mention Momin entirely in the first edition. When this egregious error was brought to his notice, he made up the excuse that he had tried to get authentic information, but none was forthcoming. A second revised edition was brought out in 1883. Azad made several amendments in the second edition. Although Faratullah Beg based his description of Momin on Azad's account, he added many finer details that Azad's description appeared bland in comparison. Momin's khaka in finest in Delhi ki aakhri Shamma and became the source how we view Momin. I summarized Beg's description below. Tall, with fair complexion, tinged with pink, with hint of green. Big bright eyes, fringed with long lashes, well-drawn eyebrows. He had perfectly sculpted nose and lips tinged red, with residue of from pan. His teeth/gums were crusted with misty. He had a slight mustache and beard, muscular shoulders, broad chest, with a slender waist. He had long fingers. His abundant hair was curly, and he wrote in long with ringlets that carelessly lay on his back and shoulders. Some stranded, twisted in ringlets hung on his forehead, and he wore long curls on both the sides of his face. He wore an angarkha of sharbati malmal, a kind of fine handspun cloth that was low cut and did not wear a kurta underneath it. One could glimpse his body through the fine cloth. Around his neck, he wore a black ribbon from which a golden taweez was suspended. A crimson dupatta was twisted and tied around his waist, its end hanging in front. In his hand, he carried a slender back scratcher, kharpusht. He wore red gulbadan pajamas that were loosened on the top and had narrowed cuffs. On his head was dopalli topi, cap with two folds, edged with lace. The topi was capyish enough to cover his head. One could glimpse his hair part through the fine cloth of the topi. Jeevan Ram's sketch of Momin. In Jeevan Ram's sketch, Momin is bareheaded, but he does wear his thick curly hair parted in the middle, and Angarkha is indeed transparent. The question is, why did Jeevan Ram choose Momin as subject? Did the poet and the artist know one another? Did Momin sit for the portrait? And why is it incomplete? We know almost nothing about Jeevan Ram's early life except that he was the son of Lalji of Delhi. Lalji was pioneer in European naturalistic style, eminent art historian of 19th century Indian art J.P. Lossi. J.P. Lossi observed that Lalji was a pupil of Johann Zoffani, which is perhaps the root of European manner which made its way to his son Jeevan Ram's work. According to Lossi, Jeevan Ram flourished between 1820 and 1840, was employed by the British in India for their portraits, done in the European style naturalistic manner in oil, and also in gaunch of ivory. He had a busy period in 1827 painting a number of offices, but he was to be found later painting members of the entourage of the Begum Samru in the 1830s. Some of these are now in the Boledian Library, dated 1835. In 1831 to 32, he was attached to the staff of Lord William Betnick and visited the Sikhs. Painting the portrait of Maharaja Ranjit Singh, Emily Eden came across him in 1838 at Meerut, where he sketched her brother, the Governor General, Lord Auckland. Colonel William Sleeman, in his Rambles and Recollections of an Indian Officials, 1844, recorded that Jeevan Ram, an excellent portrait painter and a very honest and agreeable person, had painted the portrait of Mughal Emperor Akbar II, who reigned until 1837. Raja was an honorary title bestowed by the Mughal Emperor. Momin's Masnavis. There are several Urdu adjectives that describes Momin's vivacious personality. He was a rind, banka, a jambaz, ashaq mijaz. That is, he was a known for being dandy and campy lover boy. We learn about his numerous love affairs from his Masnavis. In Momi's Masnavis, the stories are personal. His love stories are not idealistic like the ghazals, stories of love. His mahbubas are women of flesh and blood who live a social world. His love affairs are frowned upon by his parents and relatives. His experiences of meeting and separation ring true. Such realism was unusual in poetry in Momin's time. His unabashed description of love play did not go down well with critics. Momin wrote his first Masnavi, Shaqayat-e-Sitam, at 17. It was followed by Qissa-e Gham. Then came Qawl-e Ghamgeen. There are six long Masnavis all devoted to his love affairs. Qawl-e Ghamgeen is regarded as Momin's best Masnavi. It is the story of his love affair with Ummatul Fatima, whose main name was Sahabji. Momin wrote openly about Sahabji in one playful ghazal. The Radif itself is Sahab, but I will talk about it in my book on Momin. Perhaps it was Momin's reputation as a womanizer that made it difficult for his parents to find a suitable match. He was married fairly late, at the age of 23, 1823, to the daughter of Hamidan, could be commander of troops from Sardhana. Momin, an urban city boy, did not like Sardhana. The marriage did not last long. In one of his letters, he speaks of Sardhana as Kharaba, or a wasteland. How could a bird of paradise make a home in wilderness, and that too one crumpled by autumn? Murghe chaman, dar biyaban e khizan, zade, tare ashiyan na bandad. With his propensity of composing chronograms, he wrote a charming kitta affirming the year of his marriage, in which he lamented how the bulbul was caught in the net of the hunter, and how a free roaming Momin's feet were put in chains. The kitta concludes with chronogram Murge bebal par andar qafas Ahmad faryad. From the flightless bird in prison emerged this lament. Nonetheless, Sardhana is the space where Momin and Jivan Ram's path might have intersected. Jivan Ram painted Begum Samru of Sardhana and her entourage throughout the 1930s. Jivan Ram's portrait of Begum shows her wrapped up in voluminous yellow Kashmir shawl, wearing a hat with tassel of pearl and holding her hookah snake. The Begum, 1745 to 1836, was, was one of the most extraordinary and formidable characters of 19th century India. According to J.P. Losty, apparently she was from Kashmir, as she is reported to be fair complexioned and Muslim. In 1765, she married the German mercenary soldier Walter Reinhardt, circa 1720 to 78, nicknamed, nicknamed Sombre because of his swarthy appearance. Samru supposedly being an Indian corruption of Sombre. On his death in 1778, she succeeded his Jagir at Sardhana, some 50 miles northeast of Delhi and close to Meerut, and to the command of his mercenary troops. The Begum often led troops into battle. She converted to Catholicism in 1781 under the name Johanna Nobilis. With her well trained troop, she came several times to the aid of
Belgrade Emperor Shah Alam II. In 1820, she had begun to build a huge church dedicated to Virgin Mary, and in 1835 persuaded the Vatican to make it into a cathedral with her chaplain, Father Guili Caesar Scotti, as the first and the last bishop. Interested readers can learn more about Begum Samru from Michael H. Fisher's work. Fisher focuses especially on her career in 19th century and relationships with her dependents, the Mughal and the British becoming and making family in Hindustan. In Indrani Chatterjee edition, Unfamiliar Relationships, the Family and History in South Asia, Delhi 2004. Jivan Ram seems to have established himself in Meerut, close to Sardhana, by 1824. He was working for Begum from 1827 onwards. Losty's article, Raja Jivan Ram, a professional Indian painter of early 19th century, provides valuable information about our painter. He was not a Raja. The Mughal Emperor Akbar Shah II had conferred this title on him after he painted his portrait. Lausti's article had a magnificent array of Jivan Ram's work, but he did not mention our poet, Momin, or the portrait I am discussing here. Jivan Ram's portrait of Momin has a rough sketch of Begum in the back. This is how I was able to make connection between Sardhana, Momin, and Jivan Ram. Momin was in Sardhana in 1823, and it is within the realm of possibility that the gifted, wayward poet and the talented poet met there.
ये मज़ामीन और इस किस्म के दूसरे मज़मून हम लोग इस गरज से रिकॉर्ड करते जाते हैं कि आइंदा पढ़ने सुनने वालों को आसानी हो। बकौल शमसुर रहमान फ़ारूक़ी, अगर ऐसी बातों का कोई सुनने वाला हुआ। ताज़ा खाही दाश तन गर दाग हाय सीना रा, गाहे गाहे बाज खां ई क़िस्साए पारी नारा।